everyone. Welcome to Support Someone Saturday. I'm so excited to be here today with Jon and Jill Graham from Living Seven. I can't wait to hear their story. I met Jon previously down at National Religious Broadcasters Convention, and now I'm so happy to have he and his wife on here with us today. So Jon is the video producer for Georgia Baptist Mission Board. He's also the worship leader and web tech director for Center Hill Baptist Church in Loganville, Georgia. And Jill also sings on the worship team. So that's great. You're doing ministry together in more than one way. Jill's grief story started when she was 7. Her brother was killed in a car accident. When she was 21, her father died of heart failure. When she was 42, her mother died of pulmonary fibrosis. Man, this is a lot. I'm sorry. These multiples of 7 inspired them to form a nonprofit called Living Seven. Jon has been in ministry since age 17, and he's now 50, so that's awesome. He's counseled the grieving for decades. And Jill is pursuing her master's degree in social work with an emphasis on clinical therapy. And together they have been called to help the hurting. Welcome, Jon and Jill.
Thank you.
So good. Thank
Great.
you.
Yes, I'm so proud of you for all that you've had to endure and overcome. And now you're just taking the ashes and turning it into something beautiful. It's so needed. It's so needed right now. Tell us, how did you come up with the name Living Seven?
Well, you heard the multiples of 7 that the deaths occurred in my life, 7, 21, and 42. But I thought that was weird enough. But then when I went back and looked, the first death of my brother was in July, which is the 7th month. The next one was in August, and the next one was in September.
Okay.
And then my brother was 17. My mom was 71, which I thought was a little weird. And I was like, yeah, but my dad didn't have a 7 really in his. He was 52. Oh, wait. So if you 5 plus 2 is 7. So in the middle, there are 3 7s, and on either side, there is a 1. And so I feel like I looked up what they all meant. And 1 is the presence of the Most High, signifies his hand. And 7 is the perfect number.
Yes.
So I'm becoming perfect because of all this. Part of it.
In addition to that, our first date, we met in college and then kind of parted a bunch of different ways and then came back late in life. I had a previous marriage. And our first date was on February 14th on Valentine's Day, but 14 being a 7. We got married on November 21st, which was a multiple of 7. And at the time, my kids were 7 and 14. And so they're everywhere. And, it's kind of one of those things where you start looking for something, you'll see it everywhere. And we look for 7s and find them. So
we had not yet identified the pattern when we got married either. So the 21 was an accident. So.
Yeah.
That is so cool. It's amazing. It just seemed like God threading through all of this, his perfection, like you said, his mercy, his grace, the connection. I love how you found that. Yeah. So I was going to ask you, how did your grief prompt you to start the nonprofit? Let me ask you, was it a matter of having to work through this before you were able to be strong enough to start? I mean, for those that are listening out there and maybe still grieving, or was it in the midst of the grief that you decided to start Living Seven?
I think it was more after the fact because it took a while to identify it. But I remember my mom when I was a kid, the big inspiration when I was a kid and my brother died. I remember I was so little, but there were so many people that helped her. And they would come do all these things like sit with her all night and hold her hand while she slept, just on the couch, just stayed at our house instead of theirs that night. But they also would, there were stories that she would tell over and over again. And I thought, I want to be that. And so when this opportunity, I was like, well, here it is. Here's the opportunity. Take it.
I love what you just shared, right? The holding the hand all night. That is huge, man. That's like, I imagine sometimes Jesus being there holding your hand, but an actual physical person to be there holding your hand. That's phenomenal.
Emmanuel, God with us. We're doing it.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. We also had some dear friends that lost a child. And when that happened, Jill was very involved in helping that person every day. And we kind of, in Jill's story, and I'll speak on her behalf for the moment. You can interrupt me if I'm wrong, but
Oh, I will.
her family kind of imploded a little bit when her brother died, and we watched this other family handle things with a bit more grace. And so it kind of really spoke to us to say, we want to help families do it right. And there's a lot of, in Jill's case, when her brother died, she was in a sense kind of left on her own to, because you don't think about the kid. You just, oh, well, they're okay. And so real protective about what they tell. Even all the while, Jill was doing incredibly everything that was going on and was begging for someone to say, how are you doing?
Yeah, everybody always was worried about my parents, and they assumed that because I was so little, I didn't understand. So I kind of got left out. But, even if I didn't, which I did, I must say I absolutely understood. So don't ever assume that about a kid. And second of all, you just don't leave your kid out of your grieving process, because if you do, then they don't learn how to do it properly. Later on, my mother fixed that. But, at the time it was like, hey, where do I fit in this? My life's changed too. Can I get that acknowledged?
Yeah.
Yes. You know what I'm thinking as you're both talking about this? I'm like, you two could write a book. Like, this is so needed. Like, how to grieve well. I'm serious, because we also went through the grieving process when our son was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder. Eric and I grieve so differently, different personalities.
Oh, yeah.
Male and female. Yeah. And sometimes it was like you felt so alone. I think our daughter, who is older, got lost in the process. And like you said, we forgot. She was always strong and smart and independent. Well, she was hurting, the sibling of a special needs child. And a couple of years later, she went through depression, like she had stuffed it. And so you got to remember the sibling or the child. And so it would be so great to have a book that would teach us, here's the wrong way to grieve, or here's the right way to grieve, and how it looks different for all these different ages and male and female and people in the family. Yeah, I think that would be good. I could use that. Right.
Well, what we have learned is that everybody's grief is different, but there are some fundamental principles that help folks along the way. And we like to say Living Seven, not just the campground, which we'll get to in a little bit, but sort of why we exist. We're here when the casserole dishes go home. And, a lot of times people are really hovering and surrounding a hurting person for a few weeks, a month, maybe a little longer than that, but their life continues on, and they've got to get their casserole dish back, and somebody else in the church has died and they got to go prepare a meal for them. Whereas there's still people just kind of left at these spots along the road that need someone to come alongside them, and that's what we try to do.
And
I love that. Yeah.
One of the things next that we want to do too is to teach people what to do, like not just the grieving, but those around them. We would love to do, we've thought about doing a video series, like an instructional video on how to treat the grieving after the casserole. You pick up your casserole dish, now what?
Yes.
And because there's so much more to the process that you really can be supportive of. Just it may be sending a text. They may not ever respond, but they need to know that in that moment you acknowledge their grief.
I love that. I can totally see you both doing that. Like, I just saw more forms of content coming out than just this campground, like the book, the video series, like teach us how to do this and how to help others. I often have thought, just going through my own grief, you can't see it on people always. It's not like a broken arm or something like you're going around with crutches, but inside your heart is bruised and broken. And yeah, like you said, when the casserole dish goes home, you could still be hurting. Are there people there to support? And now I've learned, as I've gone through this, I don't think it's that people don't care. I think they don't know how.
No, exactly.
They're just not equipped, right? Like, and that's
they're scared. They,
to say the wrong thing, because there is a wrong thing sometimes to say.
For sure.
Yeah. But at the same time, better say the wrong thing when you're really genuinely trying than say nothing.
One of the things that we've learned, and I learned from Jill, was say their name. Don't be afraid to say the person's name. So if you walk into somebody and somehow in a conversation, you find out, I lost my mom 5 years ago, or I lost my son, or I lost whatever. What was their name? What were they like? And when you start engaging in a conversation that allows them to remember them fondly, you have made a connection that is not easily broken.
That's really good. I love that. I remember someone taught me that you should say, what is your favorite memory? So-and-so. Like, don't be afraid to talk about it, right? Like someone said, like, we're often afraid to talk about it. I heard people say, like, well, if I bring it up, maybe I'm gonna, bring up a bad memory, or it's gonna touch on something, but it's better to bring it up because chances are you're thinking about those people probably.
Right.
yeah.
I was going to say, if you think that there's a minute that goes by that I don't think of my mom and dad and brother,
Yeah.
everything I do is informed by them.
Yeah.
You asking about them is just going to let you in on my inner conversation.
Yeah, which is a blessing. I love that.
Right.
Yeah, that's so good. So tell us more about the campground. Is the campground open yet? I know, and you can explain to everyone.
And you talk about that a little more.
Okay. Yeah. Well, when we felt God calling us to this, we sold our house and cashed out. And now we live in an apartment, which is horrible and miserable. And I feel sorry for everyone that has to do that. But we took all that cash and we put it toward some land up in the Nantahala National Forest in Western North Carolina. And we're not too far from the town of Murphy. We purchased the land. It's off grid. So I'm spending a lot of time on YouTube University figuring out how to build this and how to do solar power and how to do all that. And so we have put together, we have a storage container that is kind of like our garage. We have a deck. We have a yome, which is like a yurt.
Oh, yeah.
Know what a yurt is. Okay. And we are just about finished with our bathhouse. So that will give us one structure that is sustainable for a family or a retreat of a bunch of guys or a bunch of ladies, depending on how they want to put that together. And then we hope to soon add more structures along the way. So is it open? Sort of. I mean, it's open when we're there and we can help people understand how to do all of the off-grid living business, but we're getting closer and closer to being able to just hand somebody the key. But the idea really is for us to be there with them, walk with them, literally and physically, to get them to walk. I don't remember where we heard it, but somebody we were listening to one time said there's something powerful about putting your foot in the dirt. And we're kind of designed to do that. And so hiking around in that property, hearing the rushing water in the creeks and seeing the beautiful landscape, it's just a soul soothing kind of an experience for a lot of folks. Now, some folks, it's not their deal. They'd rather be at the beach, and that's okay. But that's kind of where we are. So
I love that. I want to come visit. I'm thinking I'll talk to my husband. Like we could do a little on-site video and talk to you guys about our own grief. We've been through different things, not as much
come on down,
death, but just through betrayal with family and family that doesn't want to restore relationships. So there's a loss there, and
it's just loss,
diagnosis and things that unless God miraculously heals, just we'll have to live with, and just different things like that. And so it'd be wonderful to be with you and to help you out. So that brings us up to how can people practically help right now? Like what type of resources are you looking for? Or finances? How can people help you build this campground?
Well, just about. Now I will say this, the big pieces of the construction have been done with some help of a lot of friends along the way. But here lately, it's been mostly us. And so we would love to have folks just come up. It's the woods, it's the middle of the forest. And so have chainsaw will travel. If you want to come and cut down something, chop it up and haul it to a pile, that'd be awesome. But beyond that, I know that's not capable for a lot of folks, especially I expect your listening audience is mostly in the Chicago area. So one of the ways you can really help is to get it to where, we can help pay for some of those services to be done for us, or pay for somebody to come along and help us. So we have a way that people can give and support our ongoing ministry, either a monthly or a one-time gift.
Yeah. Tell us how they can do that. You have a website or?
I do. Yeah. The main website is living7.org, but the giving portal is at give.living7.org.
Okay. Wonderful. Thank you for that. And we can also put that up on the screen. That's really helpful to know. And I was just thinking, like for us, we go to Willow Creek, and years ago, someone gave, I think it was Bill Hybels, the founder, a huge piece of land in the UP of Michigan, also totally in the woods. And then over time, it sat there for a little bit. They started building cabins, and now they turned it into Camp Paradise. And so it's a dad's camp. So it's dad's daughters, dad's sons. And so really, because a lot of times moms spend time with the kids more often. Right. So then people drive up there, and you don't even have to go to Willow Creek. You could be from another church, another state. And then our daughter loved it so much. She went twice with my husband, with her dad, She's now on staff. So she was on
Oh,
staff
neat.
last year and now
Awesome.
this year. So yeah, it started small. It's been around now. I forget how many years they celebrated since like the late 70s, and it's
Oh,
grown
that's
over time.
awesome.
Yes, and groups of volunteers go up and
That's
work
really
on
neat.
it. And they're off the grid as well. You can barely get them on cell phone. You have to go up a climbing tower. Your cell phone may come in. Yeah. And there's no electricity except for in the kitchen. So yeah, they said it's beautiful up there. So it's kind of, a
Yeah.
similar
I mean,
service. Mhm.
it's fun. It simplifies life and it forces you to really kind of wrestle with some things that maybe all the notifications on your phone have been crowding out. And
Right.
so
Yes.
that's
Yes.
kind of our idea. And I will say,
Mhm.
so we've kind of got, I don't want to say a package, but if you say the deck and the Yome, that's about $10,000 if folks
Okay.
are interested in sponsoring one of those. I know that's a big chunk of money, but
Sure.
if folks were interested in that, and of course we would talk about how they could access that themselves as well and help us put it up. That's the real fun,
Yeah.
honestly, is
That's
figuring
good.
that out. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And would that be like one family could stay in what do you call it, a Yome?
Uh-huh.
The
Yeah.
deck? Yeah. So
Oh,
that's like, okay, one family stays there. So it's not even like you're camping in a tent or you have to bring a physical RV or camper. You've already got it set up. Okay.
Yeah. And it's actually, I mean, I can send you a picture later, but it's
Yeah.
actually got a lockable standard door like you would have at your house. And we have a propane fireplace in there and a mantle. And
Nice.
so it's pretty neat.
Yeah,
So
I
yeah.
got to get a little more woman's touch in there for
Yeah.
my taste. But
Bring in some housewares or something.
yeah.
Yeah.
Couple of
Yeah,
fuzzy
put
rugs.
curtains or something. I don't know.
I love that. That's so awesome. So can you share with us a success story that comes to mind of someone or a family that's been helped through Loving Seven?
Oh, wow.
I think the first one that comes to mind, when we first started doing our grief group, we lead a grief group once a week.
Okay.
And a woman we'd never met before comes walking in. It's the first day ever. And she said, I read online that you guys were doing this group and I wanted to come because the doctor said that I needed to do therapy and I needed to come to a grief group. So here I am.
Mm-hmm.
So she starts sharing her story, and her husband had died less than a year ago. Her best friend had died like right after that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it was 3 weeks after?
About 3 weeks before she walked in the door.
But yeah, about 3 weeks before that, her granddaughter had committed suicide.
Mm.
And she was a mess. She
Yeah.
couldn't do anything. She couldn't leave her house. She couldn't. And I heard her the other day, she was trying to get everybody to come to the grief group. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
she looks different. She can talk about it. It's okay to cry. So she did. She said, I don't cry all week. And then I come here and cry. And I was like, well, it's weird, but that's a compliment because it's okay here. So she has a place where her feelings are acceptable and normal and supported.
That's so good.
And she liked it so much that now her daughter, whose daughter was that committed suicide, is now joining us via Zoom from Pueblo, Colorado every week.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. So it's like reaching even farther now, not just your local, but across the nation. That's beautiful. It's so needed. Oh my goodness. Just people going through.
Sorry about that. One other story I want to tell just for the novelty of it. I had a friend who we found out her father had died. She actually lived in Paris, flew back to deal with all the arrangements. And I just, because it's kind of in our DNA, I said, hey, do you need to tell us how we can serve you on Facebook? Messaged her.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, do you want to find somebody to take a cat? And well, that was kind of like mission accepted. And so Jill got busy looking for someone to take this person's cat who didn't have an owner, and she had to go back to Paris. And so we were able to get that to happen too. And, you don't think about all these different pieces of a person's life that come unraveled when there's a death. And so that was one of them. Ironically, that cat was rehomed really close to our property compared to where we are right now. So it was
need to go check on her.
That's right.
Yeah.
But
beautiful.
it's just neat to see how God put all that together too.
That is so cool. Just the little things sometimes mean a lot to people, right?
Yeah.
Well, and to us, that is a little thing, but to her, she was so worried and she couldn't even get to really grieving because she was worried about the cat.
Yeah.
She couldn't get to
Yeah.
herself and worried. So if you take one of these little worries off, they can get to what they're really worried about.
Mhm. I love that. I was thinking about my daughter's piano teacher. She was my mentor, kind of like a spiritual mom, prayer partner. We texted every day together, and she told me so many things right before she passed away. We didn't even know she was sick. This is like last year in January. And she was like, Amy, we can't all leave Illinois. We need strong Christians, and we're praying for the state. And just kind of giving me a charge to go forth in ministry and to pioneer new things with Eric. And just she told me so much. And then at the end of the month, we found out she had cancer. She went downhill real fast. She died in 3 weeks. It was shocking to me. Like, I never got to say goodbye. We went to the hospital, of course, because COVID, we couldn't get in. And she was literally across the street. I was doing prayer circles around the hospital, praying for a miracle. And she shared with her daughter everyone's cell phone number but mine, because she said, no, I want to talk to Amy personally. And she's like, she's out there. She goes, she would go out of consciousness, come back in. She's like, Amy's out there circling, believing with me for a miracle, And unfortunately, yeah, it just spread. And so she passed quickly. I mean, God took her out of her pain, but it was really hard for us, the loss. And I had been praying for her, for all 4 of her children to be saved and walk with Jesus. And that was one of our last texts. Let's keep praying that God uses us. So I decided to dedicate my prayer journal to her. And the beautiful thing is I was able to connect with her daughter, the one that does still walk with the Lord. And she was so gracious to meet with me. It brought so much closure, just hearing her share, those things about my mom was always thinking of you. She was writing in her prayer journal about you and your daughter. My daughter was going through that depression I mentioned while being at piano, and she was like the child whisperer. She knew how to handle my daughter's depression, and she was praying for her. So yeah, so that was a beautiful thing. I sent the prayer journal to all her kids. Then her daughter was
that's
like,
nice.
yeah, thank you. She's like, we need someone for the cats. Now, I'm allergic to cats. My husband is allergic to cats, so we couldn't take the cats. But Stephanie reached out again in January. She said, my nephew, like her grandson, can't take her baby grand piano. Will you guys take it?
Oh, wow.
You're the first ones we thought of. I'm like, what an honor. Now, we had to travel up to Wisconsin and get it. But bless my husband's heart, he paid for piano movers. Now we have her baby grand piano in our living room.
Yay.
So we have a part of Mrs. Matter with us. I love it.
That's so great.
It was interesting. I was listening to you tell that story, and I could tell it's the same confusion. I used to keep twin boys, and they were little when my mom died, and I had to tell them that my mom died. And Sawyer said, "But we prayed for her.
Yeah.
Why did we prayed?" And it broke my heart because I was like, "What am I going to tell him?" But before I even thought about it, and this is for you too, before I even thought about it, I said, "Sawyer, you ask God for a miracle, and we have things that we really want, sure, but God had a plan, and it was time for my mom to go to God. And because you prayed for her, you sent her wrapped in light."
Ooh, I like that.
So you sent her wrapped in light.
Yes. And I kind of am thankful that he did take her that quick, because then she didn't have to suffer.
Yeah.
Of course.
Because she was suffering really bad at the end. So I love that. Wrapped in light. Perfect timing, trusting the Lord. That's good. Okay, so tell us again, what is the best way for people to reach you and even to donate if they feel led to do that?
Sure. Our main website, which is, I have to admit, because I have 8,000 other things going on, it's the guy that doesn't take care of his own stuff, right? But my main website's not that perfect, but it is Living7, and that is spelled out SEVEN, living7.org.
One word.
And then that's right. And then the giving portal is just give.living7.org. And you can find us on social, all the social channels at Living7NC for North Carolina, Living7NC. And that's Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, Jon and Jill. It's been such an honor to have you on here. Thank you for having the courage. Just the courage to share your story and to go this far to now help other people. That's just such a huge blessing. And I know God's going to bless Living7 in amazing ways. So if you're listening right now, you can check it out, living7.org. And thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Have a blessed Saturday.